A BBC News special from Westminster, where the signs are that Britain is about to have a new government formed, we think, of Conservatives and Liberal Democrats. There's no formal agreement yet, but that is the strong sense here after talks between Labour and the Liberal Democrats apparently ran into the sand. So we're now waiting for that confirmation that David Cameron will become Britain's new Prime Minister, supported in government by Nick Clegg and his Liberal Democrats. That's the scene at Westminster. It's been a very exciting, a very turbulent and eventful day. And we're scrambling, really, every hour to catch up with all the latest developments. But we'll do that with the help of our political editor, Nick Robinson, and the Conservative frontbencher, Theresa May. They're both with me. It's good to have you with us. Nick, where are we now?
Well, inside Downing Street, Gordon Brown is surrounded by some of his oldest friends and aides, and they're simply waiting for a call. They're expecting to hear that the Conservative and Liberal Democrat talks have been successful, or at the very least, that Nick Clegg says, look, we have concluded that we can't do a deal with you. At that point, it would be clear that the Prime Minister was incapable of securing a majority in the House of Commons, and therefore would have carried out his constitutional duty, which is to try. Having failed, he could at that point proffer his resignation if he chose to do so. So all of that could happen remarkably quickly, Hugh, if that decision is made by the Lib Dems to call off, as it were, formally end any thought of a deal with Labour. Now, in the event, we'd have a curiosity, which is we wouldn't know whether David Cameron was going to be Prime Minister of a minority Conservative administration or of a coalition government. I'm sure that the Cabinet Secretary, I'm sure that the aide to Her Majesty the Queen are saying it would help everybody if this was all resolved clearly, cleanly and done in one swoop, as it were, with the Prime Minister leaving and David Cameron arriving and that all clear.
Theresa May, how do you see it?
Well, obviously the negotiations between us and the Liberal Democrats were resumed this afternoon and are still ongoing. We're all still aiming for what we've been wanting to see come through this, which is that strong and stable government that can govern in the national interest, because obviously there's some key decisions for government to take.
We are all saying that the overwhelming likelihood is that some formal agreement will be reached. Are we right to think that?
Well, all I can say, Hugh, is that at the moment those negotiations between us and the Liberal Democrats are continuing. Of course, last night I was pleased that the Conservative Parliamentary Party took a key decision, which was to offer the Liberal Democrats that referendum on the alternative voting system, to put aside party political interest and to say, let's actually do what is in the national interest. And obviously the talks resumed. We know that Nick Clegg saw David Cameron this morning. There were talks between the Liberal Democrats and Labour this morning, but the talks with us resumed this afternoon. And as I understand it, those negotiations are still continuing.
It's 5 days after the election. There is a sense that people are getting a little more anxious and a little more impatient. 3 hours of talks plus this afternoon again. You do begin to wonder what is stopping people from actually forming some framework.
Well, what we all want to have come out of this is a government that can be stable, that will be strong enough to take the decisions that the country needs. That's what's in the national interest, and I think that's why it's right that the negotiations do continue, so that we can ensure that, what comes out of it is that strong government with an elected Prime Minister.
I think the answer to the delay is because the Liberal Democrats will be demanding a huge amount of detail. Veterans of the talks in Scotland, when the first coalition government was formed between Labour and the Liberal Democrats there, recall with some shock and some amazement the Liberal Democrats, David Laws, who's in these very same negotiations now, producing a 24-page opening document for the negotiations. Real detail wanted there. Now, I've been told, for example, by one source that the opening line of the negotiation, already agreed, is for fixed-term parliaments. That starting now, that if they sign up, this will mean that this Parliament goes on for 4 years and there can't be an instant election. Neither side can pull the rug under the other. So I think we might be surprised at the level of detail in that document.
That would be astonishing. The image in Downing Street now, Nick, comings and goings there all the time. Lord Mandelson arriving for more talks with Gordon Brown. But I imagine by this stage they're not talking about possible deals.
I think they're not talking about possible deals. What we were told last night is that the Liberal Democrat negotiators went to their parliamentary party, one by one stood up, all four of them, and reported that they didn't think that the Labour Party had entered negotiations with the same level of seriousness of the Conservatives. Now, Labour sources deny this. They say it's not true, that they were as eager as the Tories to do a deal, and there's obviously a dispute about this. On the Labour side, they say the Liberal Democrats were making unreasonable spending demands and unreasonable reasonable tax commitments, that they wanted a change to the voting system without a referendum, the alternative vote, come what may, and that Labour were simply not willing to give it, and they cast doubt on the commitments that the Tories have made. On the Liberal Democrat side, they say that they had real doubts about the deliverability of any deal.
Let's spell it out for viewers just joining us, Nick. We're saying that, in effect, David Cameron is about to step into number 10 as the new Prime Minister.
We are. You hesitate to say that after days like this and hours like that. I think we are as close as we possibly can be. I think that Peter Mandelson has arrived at number 10 to be with Gordon Brown at the end. To be with Gordon Brown as he says farewell to his staff, as he says farewell to his cabinet, as he finally gives up that dream of what they called the Progressive Alliance, which seems now to be dead.
Theresa, you were very cautious